Hi there, my name is Elizabeth Pino and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a PhD candidate in Information Studies at the University of Maryland in the United States, and today I'd like you to imagine a young musician with an interest in historical performance practice. She's blind, and she's excited to explore the works of Maria Theresia von Paradis, a blind composer from the classical era whom she deeply admires, not only for her musical talent, but also because they share similar lived experiences. So, our young musician goes to an archive to download the score for Lenore, one of her more famous pieces. She gets the score downloaded, only to find that it's an image-based PDF. Her screen reader can't interpret the score, but it does its best. In the following videos, you'll see it do things like begin trying to speak the music notes as if they're Arabic words, identify music notation as text elements, and tell her that pages full of music are empty.
You are currently on a text element inside of a page.
للتاء مالعاي 14 4 1 41.
You are currently on a text element inside of a page, colon. And page 9 containing content is empty.
As you might imagine, experiences like those are frustrating. Repeated scenarios like those can send a very clear message to our archival users about who is and isn't welcome in our music archive spaces. The scenario isn't hypothetical. It reflects the everyday challenges many disabled musicians encounter when accessing digital music archives of all sorts. With this project, I hope to address that critical need by creating a workflow that can convert traditional scores into accessible formats, ensuring that the music and the rich cultural heritage it represents is truly accessible to all. When archives make music scores available digitally, it's usually as PDF or image-based files. The Library of Congress's recommended formats for music scores are, in order, Music XML, MEI, and any of the portable document formats, including PDF UA, PDF-A, PDF-X, and PDF. The preferred file formats are Music XML and MEI. Right now, most score accessibility initiatives, including those backed by Choir Community, OpenScore, and the DAISY Consortium, are based on Music XML. My workflow also creates Music XML files, so it's compatible with those existing initiatives. But most newly created music scores are saved as PDFs by composers. If they're archived, it's usually as PDFs or PDF-As. The most common types used for music scores in archives are PDFs, JPEGs, or TIFFs, which are all image-based formats. Right now, even the best optical music recognition, or OMR, programs still struggle to achieve a high level of reliability, so they aren't practically usable to read a full score just yet. As a result of all of these things, most archives' digital music scores are inaccessible to many disabled users. Therefore, how music scores are archived must change. How exactly that change might take place was the focus of this study. Using a set of scores from Maria Theresia von Paradis, I tested a workflow that converts PDF music scores into accessible formats, including Braille-ready format, or BRF, modified stave notation, or MSN, and waveform audio file format, or WAVE, sometimes with or without the E. Then I conducted usability testing on the resulting scores. So first, let's go through the workflow. I began by downloading the original score from IMSLP. Next, I entered the score manually into MuseScore. Then I exported that score to Music XML and used MEI Friend, a browser-based MEI file editor, to create, clean up, and add metadata to the MEI file. After exporting it from MEI Friend, I brought the MEI file back into MuseScore. And from there, I exported the score to BRF and WAV files and created two types of MSN scores, one with colored noteheads and one with black. Based on responses from a survey I conducted, the most effective dissemination strategy for the created scores was to bring this all full circle and upload them back to IMSLP. But I also uploaded them to GitHub and Zenodo to make sure that they would reach as many people as possible. I began this project by applying that workflow to a set of 14 scores by Maria Theresia von Paradis, 2 single pieces and 1 cycle of 12 pieces, Das Gardnerliedchen aus dem Zeigwart, Morgenlied eines armen Mannes, and 12 Lieder auf ihre Reise in Musik gesetzt. After completing the workflow for Das Gardnerliedchen aus dem Zeigwart, I carried out usability testing on them. To recruit participants for that portion of the study, I used a Qualtrics survey that inquired about their usual habits around finding and using music scores. The study, both the survey and usability test portions, were IRB exempt. The recruitment criteria were that participants were 18 or older, lived in the United States, identified as disabled, and were able to read piano and voice music, including both treble and bass class. After 14 days, my survey had received 201 responses, of which 84 or 41.8% were valid for analysis. The criteria used to make that determination were that they were 100% complete, the participant had taken at least 300 seconds or 5 minutes to complete the survey, and that they had answered yes to all of the initial filter questions. Of those 84, 75 or 89.3% had answered that they would be open to participating in a remote synchronous usability test. I wanted to have roughly equal spread of participants using both the BRF and MSN scores, so I invited 9 of those individuals to participate in a test based on the variety and depth of their survey responses. Ultimately, I carried out 4 tests. And of course, I'll just note here that when I refer to particular participants from here on, I'm using pseudonyms. All other identifying information has been removed or changed, but the content of their answers remains the same. So, let's get into it. There were 4 completed usability tests. As the table on screen shows, 2, Greg and Abby, focused on BRF scores, and 2, Jassy and Louise, focused on MSN scores. 2 used the WAVE audio files, and 2 didn't. All of them had at least a 4-year college degree, had at least 4 years of workable experience, and used some form of print-related assistive technology. There were 3 prominent formatting issues with the BRF files that MuseScore cannot currently correct. First, the music in the BRF files started on the same line as the header information, so the title, composer, that sort of stuff, instead of a new line. Second, Braille music notation often doesn't use clefs, but there's no way to remove clefs from MuseScore files. Third, the BRF files didn't include appended lyrics, which all of the scores for this project used. But ultimately, both participants testing the BRF files said that they were workable, and that they were far better to have than just the image-based PDF. Next, modified stave notation is a genre of score that encapsulates as many formatting options as there are users of it. One participant preferred colored note heads, while others preferred black. Neither of my participants preferred labeled notes, but others might have. Preferences for font size were likewise varied. For this study, I used a minimum font size of 18 and used equivalent settings for non-text elements size and spacing. For one participant, that was fine, but the other preferred something larger. Again, the modified stave notation scores were overall workable, and both participants said that they were useful. Meeting everyone's needs and preferences with an MSN score is probably impossible, but finding a compromise that works for most people is probably possible. The WAVE files were generally used in an auxiliary capacity to the BRF and MSN files, so they weren't directly tested. However, all participants indicated that they were helpful to have because they helped them hear the score and tell them if there were any mistakes or other oddities in it. The primary goal of this study was to determine the efficacy and feasibility of the workflow by ensuring that the scores created are actually usable by real-world users. I found that the workflow is successful at creating 3 types of accessible scores, but that it likely requires further automation to be truly feasible for widespread implementation. Nonetheless, the workflow is very effective at creating more MEI and music XML files, which are essential to long-term preservation initiatives. They also benefit digital humanities practitioners by creating datasets for them to analyze in any number of new and imaginative manners. Most importantly, it increases the number of accessible music scores available to users. With increases in OMR capabilities, this workflow could be made really practical. But returning to the present, during their usability tests, Abby noted that, quote, the original PDF score is just completely inaccessible, end quote. And Greg proclaimed that, quote, I'm unable to know anything, end quote, from the original PDF score. We can change that. Archivists must center accessibility in all that they do, at all stages of design, because accessibility touches all aspects of archival work. Creating accessible versions of otherwise inaccessible music scores for disabled users helps make practically attainable users' human rights to information access and cultural heritage. Archivists are both motivated and powerfully positioned to facilitate those rights in a way that allows not just our musician from the beginning of the presentation, but every user to access the vibrant and rich worlds, histories, and heritages contained within each score. This workflow can help archivists begin that long, vitally important journey. You'll see my references scrolling by here, and on that note, I will wrap up. You can scan that QR code to be taken to the project website, and my email address is listed there on the slide. It's epineo@umd.edu. Feel free to reach out anytime, and with that, I will say thank you.